So the environment can be broken into two broad areas, which sounds very underwhelming because the environment is massive. As soon as you look outside your organization, you're looking at the environment. So to make it somewhat manageable and analyzable for us, we break it into these two broad areas of the broad environment and the task environment. So the broad or general environment, we use the acronym, there's lots of acronyms, there's PESTLE, STEEPLE, but broadly speaking, what they break down to is, let's go with the STEEPLE. So there's a socio-cultural environment, technological environment, the economic environment, the ecological environment, and then the political environment, the legal environment, and the ethical environment. And if you look around your broad environment, these are issues, trends that affect every organization. Now, that means that they're huge. They're trends that are societal wide. So, for example, COVID-19 was something that impacted every organization. So that was a major broad environment event. Then we can also talk about the task environment. So that's getting a little bit closer to the organization, getting tighter into the organization. And when your task environment, you're looking at your main competitive groups, your regulatory bodies, your main suppliers, your buyers, etc. So these are the organizations and the stakeholders who will affect you on a daily basis. So that's our external environment. And then we can also talk about our internal environment. So internally, we can look within our organization and look at the different stakeholders within there. So there's owners, management, senior executives, board, employees, members, depending on the type of organization you're involved in. These are all different parts of the environment or environments that we need to get our heads around and be able to analyze and understand what's going on. Well, I put it this way to my students. I say, how many of you know how to drive a car? And most people put their hand up. Not everyone, but most people put their hand up. I say, okay, how many of you know what to do if something goes wrong with the car? And most of the hands come down, mine included. I know how to put fuel in, check the oil, check the tires. That's about the extent of my abilities. However, if you know how to analyze the environment, both external and internal environment, you know how to lift the hood on the car and say, okay, I can see what's going wrong there. By listening to it, by looking at it, by seeing where there's leaks or where there's something making a noise that probably shouldn't be making that noise, you can understand, okay, that's what's going wrong. Here's what's probably going to happen in the future, and here's how we can remedy that problem. So understanding your environment is really like being able to lift the hood up on the car and know what's going on under there. So in assessing the organization's environment, what managers need to do is think internal and external. So internally, we can think of, okay, what are we really good at? What resources do we have? What capabilities do we have? And what do we not have? And what do we need to create access to? So inevitably, there'll be some deficits in some places, and there'll be some other areas where we're incredibly strong. So competitively, you want to apply where you're strong and remedy where you, and even hide where you're weak, but address it nonetheless. So it's about understanding that balance between the internal and external environment. Equally, we need to know not just where we're strong, but looking externally, where might there be some potential threats that are going to potentially take advantage of our weaknesses or exploit our weaknesses. And at the same time as well, we're looking externally to say, well, we're very strong in this particular area, where can we apply that? So obviously you've probably picked up that that is the basis of the SWOT analysis, but the information for that comes from your control mechanisms that you have in your organization. So, you know, your feedback mechanisms, your concurrent control mechanisms, and also your feed forward mechanisms, your crystal ball looking out to say, well, going to potentially happen in the future, and how will we remedy that? So we do that through different scenario planning. And people throughout the organisation can contribute to that. Our boundary spanners, you may have heard that term from your marketing classes possibly, but they can come from anywhere in the organisation and feed in information that may or may not be useful in the long term, but it's all information that we as an organisation need to work out, okay, or managers need to work out, how do we use that? How do we bank that knowledge and anchor it in the organisation so that we can access it readily and use it if and when we need it. In terms of the tools that sport organisations can use to analyse their external environment here, and we're talking specifically external environment for now, usually they'll start, depending on the type of organisation, with some sort of SWOT analysis. So we'll just park the strengths and weaknesses side of the SWOT because that's about the internal organisation. Externally, they're looking at the opportunities and threats in the external environment. So opportunities, we're looking, okay, let's say there's a change of government coming up, impending elections. What does the change of government mean for us? Is it an opportunity? Is it a potential government coming in who's more favourable in terms of funding, high performance sport funding, for example, for our national sport organisation that we've been incredibly successful at the last Olympic Games and World Cup and so on. Or alternatively, is it a threat? So are they not friendly to national sport organisations, or are their funding policies somewhat challenging for us? So that presents a particular threat. So we need to work out, well, how do we counter that threat? How do we diversify our revenue basis so that we're not reliant on that particular source? By the same token, there can be threats and opportunities throughout the environment, with rising unemployment, changes in interest rates, for example, disposable income, the rise of particular demographic groups. In many Western nations, we have this massive demographic bubble coming through the system of retirees. So the baby boomer generation, presents socio-cultural opportunities and threats for particular organisations. So again, depending on the type of organisation you are, you're looking at that external environment and trying to understand, okay, where are the opportunities and where are the potential threats?